All righty. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this Leadership Power Hour focused on knowing your team. Here's a fun fact to kick off your day. A recent Global Force survey report tells us that 78% of full-time employees spend more time with coworkers than they do with their families. Probably not shocked by that because you know we spend a lot of time at work. And the world of work is changing. Employee expectations are changing. Employees want fulfillment. They want meaning in their work and connection. So what does all that add up to? Today's leaders, that's you, must respond to the changing expectations of employees, particularly given how much time we spend at work, in order to provide fulfillment, meaning, and the connection that employees desire. I believe that we overcomplicate leadership and leadership development. So today, we're going to keep it super simple and remind you of some fundamental truths. We're going to share 4 simple things, just 4 actions that leaders can do to get to know their teams more deeply. And this is a full workshop that we do at HRD, so we've condensed it, obviously, for our purposes this morning. So you're going to hear me reference the Know Your Team workshop over and over. And as I do that, that's what I'm talking about. And I'm here with my awesome colleague, Jill Schellenberger. Jill, say hi.
Good morning.
And here we are. We'll click on the video for a second. Hi. Super smiley about this topic, as you can see. All right. Let me just get to our next slide. All right, so this is our focus today. Leadership is a relationship, and how perfect it is that I'm co-leading this webinar with my colleague and my friend Jill, because it is our long-term relationship that led to Jill joining the HRD team.
Absolutely. So about 10 years ago, I was new to talent development, and I met Andrea at a leadership conference. She became a fast friend and mentor, and over the past 10 years, we've met for lunch, we've called each other, we've bounced ideas off of one another. It's been such a great relationship, and now fast forward 10 years, and I get to,
10 years?
I know, it's crazy. I get to learn and work alongside Andrea every single day. So great.
So the key message in that story, in our message today, is to focus on the relationship. No doubt, you are busy leaders and you work with busy leaders every day, but we get so caught up in the busyness that we forget what's really important, the person in front of us right now. I think the relationship is way more important than your to-do list. There's an IT leader, I'm working with his organization, and in a coaching session recently, the IT leader who's new to his team was grumbling about some of his team members not wanting to participate in a team outing. He made an assumptive leap that their lack of interest in getting together as a team meant that they didn't want to get to know him. And so I asked him some questions, and in probing further, I asked him to tell me about his team members. And in answering that question, he told me about their work. He told me what they do. So I interrupted him, and I asked about his team members personally. I asked, what are their interests, and do they have families? And he looked at me kind of funny and paused and said, well, I think a couple of them do. So that opened the door for a good conversation about how to truly get to know team members. But isn't that happen all the time? You know, people that we're working with every day, we don't even know. Important to take the time to get to do that. So in the spirit of getting to know people, we want to get to know a little bit about you. So we have a quick poll question. We're going to, throughout this webinar, Jill and I both have very interactive styles, and we love to collaborate and learn about others. So we're going to be asking several poll questions and then asking you multiple times to put your thoughts in the chat feature. So please engage with us over the next 45 minutes. No doubt that will really maximize your time. Here's the first poll question to get to know you. We want to know what level of leadership you are in. So which of the following best describes your role? Are you an individual contributor? Are you a manager of individual contributors? Are you a director leading leaders? Or are you a vice president C-suite? So it looks like we've got 3 of 16. We'll give it a few more seconds. We've got 7 of 16. Good, so it looks like 44% are managers. No, we've got about a balance there. 10 of 16, so we give you 5 more seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, good. Well, thank you for that. That's just good insight. You can see on the screen kind of a mix of who we've got. And so we've got different levels of leadership on the call, but here's the thing. Regardless of which level you are leading from, the importance of relationships is critical. And we can learn that from your experiences. So another bit of interaction here. You know, we've all worked with a lot of leaders throughout our lives and within our careers. So I want you to think of someone who's had a big impact on you. First person that comes to your mind, what was it that he or she did that really impacted you? What sets him or her apart? And we want you to put your thoughts in the chat feature for everybody to see.
So while you're typing, I will share an example. Gosh, it was nearly 20 years ago. I was promoted at L'Oreal USA to district manager of key accounts. And my manager at that time, he saw something in me that I did not see. I was so nervous. I think I was 24 years old. I had no idea what I was doing. The next day, I'm in Cleveland, and he literally handed me, do you remember those big old school, like, ledger-style checkbooks? A checkbook at age 24 with an $8 million budget. So you can imagine I was so nervous. But what Gary did for me, he set me up for success. He assigned a mentor to me. There was so much training and support, and I felt so empowered, motivated, and excited. And I can tell you, almost 20 years later, Gary has been one of my biggest cheerleaders throughout my career. So he's someone I've certainly kept in touch with. He had a huge impact.
Oh, that's good. And that's so aligned with what we're seeing in the chat feature, Jill. Trust. Thanks for that, Jamie. Thanks, Desiree. Made my development a priority.
Oh, hi, Katie Feltman. I love it. I love it. Mary B was great.
Valued my opinion, allowed me to challenge her. Yeah, I typed cared about me personally. There's a leader that I work with in Chicago that really wanted me as a person to grow and develop. Yeah, so see, we see from our own experiences, this is not rocket science, right? I've asked this question thousands of times to leaders all over the world, and guys, these are the same responses I always get. So what does that tell us? Leadership is about the relationship, right? That's the thing. And I think as leaders, I think we know the right thing to do. We just don't often do it. Why? We get so caught up in stuff that really doesn't matter. We get caught up in getting the result, which is important, but what if the relationship were stronger? I think the results could even be stronger. You know, there's so much focus in leadership development about knowing yourself. And I absolutely believe being someone who's, you know, I'm an executive coach and I've been doing leader development for over 20 years. And while I agree that great leaders must know themselves and be clear about who they are and why they do what they do, the focus must shift to others once that is sorted. And the problem is that some leaders act as if it's always about them. So today our focus is on knowing others. It's shifting from me to we. But new leaders don't always learn the importance of the relationship. So let us ask you another chat question or another poll question. Let me go here. So I'm curious, we've got a lot of leaders on the call, and I'm curious, how many of you were given training, mentoring, or coaching prior to becoming a manager? And then come down. There we go. So we've got 17 of 22. We'll give it a few more seconds. I feel like we need like some Jeopardy music or something. Okay, we'll go ahead and end the poll. This is great. So 41% were given training, mentoring, or coaching prior, 29% were not, and 29% minimal. So pretty much aligned with the research. The research shows that 60% of new managers don't receive any training, which is why the research is also consistent with 60% of new managers fail in their first 2 years. Probably not surprised by that. And again, our stats show that a lot of folks on this call weren't given any training. You know, in organizations, I'm sure a lot of you have seen, organizations make the assumption that if you're a good individual contributor, you'll succeed as a manager. But we know that the skill set is different, because individual contributor leadership is about getting results on my own. And manager success is about getting results through others. So at HRD, leadership development is a huge passion of ours, and Jill and I could not be more excited about this topic and the work we're doing, because we have such a soft spot and such a passion for helping leaders to be successful.
You know, I think there's another assumption that is often made, that sometimes when someone has quote unquote manager experience, that they've had some sort of training and they come to a new organization, but most often they haven't received any training.
Yeah.
So that's something to consider also.
Well, and so those habits then, without any training or coaching, think about the bad habits that leaders develop. You know, you all probably work with leaders that you struggle with or that challenge you. They probably weren't given any support early on. They developed bad habits that have stuck with them throughout their careers. So these are, from our perspective, the 3 keys to getting results through others. Developing a leadership mindset. So yes, it has to start with you, but you use what you know about you to improve your relationships. So workshop number 2 is knowing your team. And then once you know your team and who they are, what they value, what's important to them, then you're in the best position to really push and grow and develop and challenge them.
Can I ask you guys a question? Are you still seeing the poll on your screen? Do we need to close it?
Hopefully that's gone.
Okay. Hopefully that's gone.
Feel free in the chat feature too, if weird technology kinds of things come up, feel free to just send us a message, because we'll be monitoring that. Good, thanks for checking in on that, Jill. So obviously today we're focused on knowing your team, but these are the 3 keys. On May the 3rd, we're gonna do a webinar on growing your team, so you can take the insights you get from today and use it to help you with the May 3rd webinar, and join us for that. So let's get into, let's focus on knowing your team. I mentioned earlier that our goal today was to share 4 simple strategies, 4 actions that any leader can take. And so here's strategy number 1. Know the names of each team member's significant other and children, and ask about them. So it's not enough just to know, but ask how they're doing. So this idea came from a podcast I listened to a few years ago. There's a great podcast series called Manager Tools. I highly recommend it if you're looking for something to listen to on the drive-in, or they're short snippets of learning, like 10 minutes. But there was one that was focused on retention. And the author of the podcast called this the retention litmus test. This being knowing the names of each of your team members, significant others, and their children. And the author said, like, if you can do that, like that's good. You've got a good level of knowing. So I'm curious how many of you can do this. So let's pull up our 3rd poll, launch it. Can you name the significant other and or children of each of your team members? Yes or no? And let's be honest here, integrity is a core value. If you say yes, I'm going to ask you to type them in the chat feature. Just kidding, I won't do that.
And I love the bonus point, if you can name their dogs. I would not expect anyone in this office to be able to name all of my cats.
Nope.
It'd be a little hard to keep up.
Yeah, but we know you've got lots of cats. So that's something, right? All right, we'll give it we've got 16 of 22, so we'll give it a few more seconds. Oh, I love that 3 people can name the dog too.
I love Katie's comment. I can probably know the dog and cat names more than the kid names. Katie's quite an animal lover also. Yeah.
Well, that's good. See, good connection point. All right, we'll end and share this so y'all can see. So well done. So 69% of us on the call can name the significant other and children of each of our team members. That's great. So for the 5 of you that can't, I love your honesty, and think about how you could do that. And for the 3 of you, bonus points that you can name the cats and the dogs. Well, so here's something. You know, I've been an HR person for over 20 years, and a question I get probably, you know, fewer and farther between today than I used to get in my career was this whole concern about really getting to know team members. You know, that you might have a manager say, well, gosh, you know, shouldn't I be careful about getting too personal with my team members? And so guys, the strategy is not to ask personal questions that make your team members uncomfortable. The strategy is knowing who your team members are and what they care about most. Talking about what they care about and what is important to them is never going to make them uncomfortable. They'll love you asking about the people that they love and the things that are important to them. So if you have somebody that loves camping, if you have someone who loves to go hunting, ask them about that. It's not going to make them uncomfortable. When you make them uncomfortable is when you put them in situations that make them uncomfortable talking about things that are uncomfortable. So Jill, anything you'd add to that?
Yeah, I think we probably all have a story one way or another. I mean, I've had a manager in the past where I love him to death, but he did not want to know anything personal about anyone on the team, and it was actually frowned upon. So it was difficult because what's going on in your life each day with the people that you love can impact how you're feeling at work. So I think it's important to have those conversations.
That's great. And remember, leadership is a relationship.
Exactly.
And so how to connect with people is finding out what they care about, what they love. And clearly the people in their lives are a big part of that. This is all about knowing what's important to the people you serve. So think about, like, who do you need to get to know better? If leadership is a relationship, you know, who's following you and who might you need to just seek to understand more about? Let's look at some additional questions that you can ask to get to know your team members. I've lost my little clicker.
It's behind your teeth. Oh. We need more caffeine this morning.
There it is. I found it. So here's some additional questions that you can ask. So find out about birthdays. What does that do? It gives you a great opportunity to celebrate people. Paying attention to if somebody's got like a big crisis or a big issue that might be hindering their work. You know, I have learned that a lot of times, and the reason that managers shy away from having these kinds of conversations is because they feel like they're not equipped to solve it or to help. You guys, all you have to do is listen. Just expressing concern, just saying I care about you and saying I'm sorry you're going through that is going to go such a long way. Again, what's leadership about? The relationship. If someone has a big issue in your life, going on in their life that's impacting what they do every day, it's important that you acknowledge that. And I'm not saying counsel or solve their problem. You know, connect with somebody in human resources or a support system for them that can help them with real issues. And then naming hobbies or favorite activities. You know, we talked about camping and hunting and ice skating and things that people love to do.
One thing that blew me away when I joined HRD Advisory Group, on Mondays we start off our week with a team meeting. And the one piece that really caught me off guard was we go around the table and we call it positive focus. So everyone names something positive personally that happened in the last week and then something positive professionally. But the piece that I want to focus on with this is the positive focus on the personal aspect, because everyone goes around the table, and I learned that Tyler loves to camp and Jacob loves to camp and Joe went to kickboxing, and so you learn all these things about your team, and I love that. It's a great way to kick off the week and also to get to know each other better.
Great reminder. So there you go. There's another idea. Start your next team meeting with positive focus. Just have everyone share something that they're positive about, something they're grateful for. You're going to learn a lot. Awesome. So a great forum for asking questions and getting to know people is the good old one-on-one meeting. You know, those one-on-ones are such a critical time in the midst of busy lives and pressure-driven work environments. So we're going to talk for a minute about one-on-ones. I'm curious, how do you start your one-on-ones? Let's do a poll here. Oh, hang on, it's taking me a minute to find our next poll.
There we go. Okay,
here we go. So how do you begin your one-on-ones with your team members? And again, honesty, it all starts with awareness. There's absolutely no right or wrong. Good, we've got 8 of 22, keep going, keep going. It's a good old one-on-one meeting. I found some funny one-on-one memes when I was preparing for this. Yeah, but none of them were appropriate. So I made the decision not to include them. Okay, we're going to end the poll. Anybody else want to jump in? We've got 15 of 22. All right, we'll use this. Good. So the majority of you, 67%, are starting by asking how your team member is doing. Great. 3 of you are asking them what they want to talk about, which is really good. Someone's starting with your to-do items, which is so common. And then we've also got someone on the call who doesn't do regular one-on-ones, also really common. So here's the thing. You know, most of us are at work on an average of 40 hours a week. And within that 40 hours, there's a lot that we have, competing priorities and multiple meetings and multiple conversations. And so for me, the one-on-one is a deep breath kind of moment. It's a moment to take a step back and just check in with your team member. A strategy that I have had for years and I've taught, and I know this has been valuable to other leaders, is starting each of those conversations with just a very simple, open-ended question, how are you? Because what does that do? That puts the ball in their court. That gives them an opportunity to use the time, their dedicated time, in a way that they get what they need out of it. Jill, anything you'd add to that?
Well, yes, but I wanted to respond to Bridget's question. She joined a little late and wanted to know if the slide deck would be available after the webinar.
And yes, we can certainly send it to you, Bridget.
Yeah, to add to what Andrea said, I've worked at companies where we've had regular one-on-ones, ones where we didn't, and then ones where it was up to us. And I see such a difference in the positions I've held where we meet regularly. I think it's so important. And I'll tell you, Andrea is so great about every Monday when I sit down with her at 4 o'clock, she does every single time. She starts off with, how are you? And we catch up a little bit personally, and then I start with my list. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we don't even get to your list, and we do that later.
A lot of times your list is my list.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that says a lot about alignment. Yeah. If I had a list that the team member was unaware of, or it was new, or something would be off in our relationship, right? Because we should be connected enough that we know what's going on.
Yep, absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit more about one-on-ones, because sometimes people don't even know where to get started with them. I think to ensure you stick to a schedule, I would encourage you to set aside 30 to 60 minutes on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. You know, and figure out what works for you as a leader. 30 minutes every other week might be perfect for your team because of the nature of your work or because of your relationship. Don't feel confined to a conference room. You know, I suggest, like, get out of the office, go for a walk, grab a coffee. Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I was just reading Katie's comment about getting right to the, well, I think we already kind of talked about that, about our list as far as hopefully they're both aligned.
Yeah, absolutely. But Katie, I mean, how normal is that, right? I mean, I'm a get-to-it, action-oriented person too. So let's be efficient. But that's why we have to remember leadership is a relationship. Deep breath moment. We have to take a step back and give the person that we're connecting with an opportunity to share. Here's a sample one-on-one in case there's anyone on the call who is not doing them and you don't know where to start. I would challenge you to try this. Try it out. So start the one-on-one with updates from them. Then check in on goals and priorities and any action items, so things that you want to commit to. I think that's critical. And then I would also encourage you, just in the spirit of knowing and growing your team, to check in on their individual development plan. How are they growing? I think businesses don't grow, people grow. And so we will grow our businesses and better our businesses by pushing people out of their comfort zones and helping them to take on new challenges and opportunities. So checking in on how they're growing is an important part of that.
I can tell you the companies or the positions I've held where one-on-ones were not done regularly or at all, or were left up to me, I didn't feel as connected. And then when I did have a one-on-one, I almost went into it feeling nervous because you don't have that relationship. You don't know where you stand. So if there's anything I've learned in the first month here is how important these one-on-ones really are.
That's so good. Yeah, and I think that that's a really good point. If you're going into it nervous, that should be a gauge that we don't have the kind of relationship we should have.
Exactly.
Right? That flow. Great. Okay, so 2 strategies down. Are you ready for strategy number 3? Jill, I know you are.
Yes.
Strategy number 3 is all about using those ears. So engaging your team members and helping you to actively listen to them. You know, it is only by actively listening to the other person in your interaction that you are truly going to be able to communicate effectively and establish the relationship we've been talking about. So we all know how important listening is. So notice the strategy isn't listen. The strategy, so there's a bit of a twist on this, right? Because the strategy is to engage your team members in helping you to actively listen. We know how important listening is. The challenge is we're not as often as intentional about listening as we should be. And it kind of gets back, Katie, to your point about being, so action-oriented and so busy and being the to-do list person. Yeah, so often we're so focused on the goal, the agenda, our agenda, that we don't have the headspace to listen, which is why that intentionality is really, really important. So in the workshops, the Know Your Team workshops that we do, we use this DISC model. I suspect that most of you on the call are familiar with this DISC model. You can see that there are 4 quadrants. The D stands for direct, I stands for influence, S stands for steadiness, C stands for compliance or conscientiousness. So those are the 4 styles within the DISC model. And this black dot is where I fall on this model. And so remember earlier we talked about leaders have to know themselves to then be in a position to connect with and know others. Well, what I know about myself is I am very driven, very fast-paced, very action-oriented, efficient. I can do a lot in a short period of time. But what I often compromise then is the people that I'm working with. And so these concepts that I'm sharing with you today are things I have to be intentional about because I am not naturally a good listener. I mean, my DISC style shows that. But here's the thing, guys. It's not a capability issue. It's an intentionality issue because I can listen just like everyone else. God gave me 2 ears and 1 mouth, just like he did Jill. But I'm not naturally as good of a listener as Jill is. There's an HR director at a company I'm working with right now that fits into that S style, and she and I have really, really connected. Actually, she and I are going to be doing the May 3rd webinar together, and she fits into that S style. And every time I get to her office, she brings such a calming presence to me, and she is so good at tuning in to what's going on with my life, and she always asks me questions about my life, and I attribute the fact that I connected with her so quickly to that listening, and she's reminded me of how important that is in relationships.
Yeah, on this DISC model, I dot out on the very edge in between I and S, which kind of ironic and a little bit funny to me because we both like to talk, clearly, but I do feel like I'm able to take a step back and pause and listen and be mindful.
Absolutely.
It's important.
You're very good at that. And I think, Jill, that shows up in the strength of the relationships that you have, right? The depth of the relationships you have. So I tell my teams, knowing this about myself, because it could be a weakness, but I have to manage that, right? So I tell my team to let me know when you feel like I'm not listening or you need my headspace, because again, I can do it, right? I can be intentional, and I'm an executive coach, so I've learned how to listen well, but it's just not as natural for me. I tell my team, point out when there's something really important for me to hear, right? So that I can really, really tune into that. All right, so I want to give you some listening skills. This is great. Again, in the workshop that we do, we spend a big chunk of time practicing our listening skills because, as we've talked about, results-oriented leaders often don't take the time to listen. So there are 3 simple things that you can do to improve your listening skills. And so I'm going to share those with you now. So what I'm about to do is terrifying, and it will feel terrifying to you, but if you do it, it will be perceived as more powerful, more persuasive, and more charismatic. So here I go. Okay, did you catch it? Jill, did you catch it?
Pause, 5 seconds.
Yes, I paused for 5 seconds. And I've heard, there's all kinds of different rules. I often encourage leaders to go 10 seconds because I know that they won't. And so it's like you overshoot. But I just paused for 5 seconds. And the key is pausing after you ask a question. Our brains are processing all the time. We have 60,000, on average, 60,000 thoughts a day.
Wow.
That is a lot going on up there. And so we need to give people time to catch up, time to think, right? Time to process the questions that we just asked. So pausing is huge. The second thing that you can do to improve your active listening skills, of course, is questions. Asking a question to seek to understand or get more information. And you guys know this, when you're in a conversation with someone, you are often thinking about how to respond rather than thinking about them or seeking to understand, right? It's Stephen Covey's seek first to understand rather than be understood. We're so focused on what am I going to say next that we miss out on the connection opportunity that's right in front of us. So ask a question to seek to understand, to go a little deeper, to get engaged in the conversation. And then the third one is reflecting back, reflecting words. So this is otherwise known as paraphrasing, and it has the same impact that questioning does. In addition to paraphrasing the words that are spoken, you can take the conversation even deeper if you're able to reflect the emotions behind the message. I have a stepdaughter who's 10 years old, and she's really struggling with some friends right now. And man, the hard part about parenting a 10-year-old is the 10-year-old in me comes out, right? Because I remember them being in 5th grade and friends being nice to me one day and not the next day. And so she was telling me this the other day, and I immediately started thinking, like, oh my gosh, I have no idea what to say. I have no idea how to help her. And I remembered this, like, what she needs me to do right now is just to listen to her and just be here. And so I just really connected to her words, and I cried with her. And we just sat there, and I held her, and I just said, I know it's so hard.
And
I know
it's not necessarily provide a solution that you don't have, just to listen, to be present.
Absolutely, and connect with what they're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So I want you to apply this. So think back to a recent situation in which you did not understand a team member, a peer, a boss, or even a family member. And which of the active listening techniques may have helped you to better communicate? So just like the story I told about Sophie there, it was just reflecting her feelings was helpful. Type in the chat feature, what would have been helpful for you?
And I can share an example while you're typing. With a manager that I didn't have regular one-on-ones with, I scheduled time to go and talk to this person, and I kind of knew it might be a difficult conversation going into it. I wanted to review an action plan I had put in place based on an assessment and training I had gone through. So when I went in and approached, just immediately, it was uncomfortable. I asked a question, I presented my report, and it was just a downward spiral. And I'll tell you what was lacking. Neither of us were pausing. It was just like, and we weren't listening, and then we were constantly thinking about what I was going to say next.
Yeah.
And it was downhill from there. So had I paused and asked more questions and reflected, it would have gone much more smoothly.
Versus just reacting.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Good example.
And that's so important what you said, reacting emotionally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think of these.
So what are we sharing here?
These three, yeah, let's give them another minute.
Okay.
Feel free to type your thoughts in the chat bar. At least one. Let's get one really good example. Yeah, I think about these three active listening skills as responding versus reacting. Reacting is that initial emotional bit that comes out. Responding is a deep breath. Okay, that's the pause. What question could I ask right now? Tapping into what they're feeling, what they're thinking. Like that's responding versus reacting. So Tina says, if I'd been more reflective, I could have better understood how their situation, yes, was making them feel. Absolutely. Everybody's got their own stuff, right? We are all walking around with all kinds of stuff. If I would pause, I would get more from the person rather than trying to fix or provide a solution. Yep.
Jody had one also.
Oh, no, I think my issue is that I assume I understand what's being said and don't think to ask more questions. Yeah, after several minutes, we finally get to the resolution, but it could have happened sooner if I'd asked more questions. Yes, great.
Definitely.
Good, thanks guys. Good ideas. Okay, so 3 strategies down. Let's move on to number 4. Strategy number 4 is all about strengths. Every single day, look for opportunity to leverage member strengths. We want to start with you here. We have another poll. I'm curious, how often are you engaged in activities that leverage your strengths? Would you say not often, once a week, at least once a day, or almost always? We really need to get some polling language.
Yeah.
Polling music. I mess up my words a lot. It's a gift. 17 of 23. We'll give it a few more seconds. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share the results. Share results. Yeah, this is why we're having this conversation, right? So the majority of you said at least once a day, which is good. But I would love for everybody to say almost always. 3 of you said once a week, and 1 person said not often. So from these responses, you all can identify some strength-based activities that you're engaged in. So think about how you feel when you're doing that work. You feel like you're in the zone, you're in the flow, time flies, your confidence is soaring. Like that's what a strength-based activity is, something that makes you feel strong. So think about this from your team members' perspective. Like, what if you asked them that question? What would they say? Are they engaged in activities that make them feel strong? Do you even know? Or the converse of this is being engaged in activities that drain their energy. Do you know which activities drain their energy? Is there an opportunity for you to apply one of their strengths to an energy draining activity? So those are the kinds of questions that we need to focus on. Another poll, we're going to share some research around what percent of managers focus on strengths. So let's see from your perspective, what percent of managers do you think or do you believe focus on strengths? Some of you probably know this research. You know, Gallup does all kinds of things around strengths. Got 17 of 23. What percent of managers do you believe focus on strengths? We're going to end it in 3, 2, 1. Thumbs up. So 50% of you, no, 44% of you believe that 50% of managers focus on strengths. Boy, don't I wish that were true. So the 7 of you that said 25% are correct. So the research from Gallup shows that only 25% of managers focus on strengths. Goodness gracious. And employees are 6 times less likely to be engaged in their jobs when there's no focus on strengths. So the thing about this is this is again, we overcomplicate leadership challenge. By connecting with people on what's important to them and what they like to do, we learn where areas of strengths are. I mean, anybody can go out and buy the Strengths Finder book for $15 and ask your employees to take that assessment and then talk through their top 5 strength themes that come back. But you can also just have a conversation about activities that really bring them joy and fulfillment. Now, will 100% of their day be focused on strength building activities? No, but if the majority of their day is, then that gives them confidence and encouragement to work through the draining kinds of activities. I love connecting with people, and I love getting results, and I love action and doing things and planning and visioning, and that's the part of my job that gives me so much energy and so much strength, connecting with my team, building people up, doing workshops, pushing leaders and business owners to really leverage the people in their businesses. That's what fires me up. But I lead this business, and so I spend a lot of time looking at reports and analyzing data. And those are activities that are not naturally really super exciting for me. But I do it because I know of the impact that it has on the business and how important it is. One of my top strengths is positivity. And so I infuse that strength into those activities. I look at it in terms of really important. And so that strength feeling helps me to engage in that activity. Jill, anything you want to add?
Yeah, that's so good. And one thing I'm thinking about with one-on-ones is just simply ask the question if you don't know. What are your strengths? What tasks do you not like to do? And figure out how you can turn it into, take their strengths and turn that task into a positive. I think that's so good.
Yep. From cold calling to gold calling.
I know. It's making me think of my conversation with Joe on that.
Yeah, we have a team member who is so great, so much initiative, such a workhorse, will just do whatever the business needs. And he's doing a lot of cold calling right now. So we worked with him to reframe it as gold calling. Put a positive spin on it. Okay, so those are our 4 strategies. And you may still be asking, why should I encourage leaders to take the time to get to know employees on a more personal level? Well, if you're not yet convinced, let's talk about trust, right? Because getting to know what's important to team members shows that you believe in them, shows them that they're worth knowing. And so they're these things we've been talking about, these are the things that build trust. And when a leader takes the time to invest in team members on a more personal level, it shows that they care about who they are, not just what they do. And once a leader is able to build a foundation of trust, it's the start of open, honest communication and creates an environment in which everyone feels supported and believes that they have something to offer. So the model that you see on the screen, again, this is the model that we use in our Know Your Team workshop. And I love this model because it represents something really critical about trust that we don't often think about. What it represents is that trust is in your hands. So the egg represents trust. And when trust, or the egg, is treated roughly, so like not following through, spinning the truth, blaming others, that's when trust is treated roughly, it shatters. When trust is forgotten or taken for granted, so that report that you used to do weekly that slides down your priority list and now you're only doing it once a month, that is trust slipping through your hands. The difference between the egg and trust is that you can rebuild trust because it's in your hands based on what you do. So pay attention to your choices. There is an example every time I talk about relationship building and trust. that I always think about. I was working with this gal named Megan. This was several years ago, and I was leading a team of consultants, but I was also delivering a lot of work, and so I had very, very full load. And the driver achiever in me spent more time and attention on my consulting work than building up my team. And I'll never forget, there was a day I came out of my office and Megan was sitting in her cubicle and I had a meeting with a client just down the hall from her cube. And I came out of my office and I could tell immediately she had her hands down on her desk, her head in her hands on her desk, and just was oozing with there's something going on with her. And I'll be darned, I kept on going. And I went to my meeting. Because I was late, I had a client. I mean, I couldn't stop to talk to Megan because I had to get the results with this client, right? But I wasn't present in the meeting because it nagged at me. We know the right thing to do. We just don't often do it, right? And in that moment, so thankfully, I had an awareness of that. And as soon as that meeting was over, I went to Megan and I apologized to her and I acknowledged what happened. And we had a great conversation and she gave me a ton of grace. But trust is on me, right? We make all kinds of excuses and we blame others and they're hard to get to know and they don't care. And well, what are you doing? Like my mom, the phrase my mom has always used my whole life is, Andrea, tend your own garden, like get your own stuff straight. Stop thinking about others and what they're doing and focus on you and how you're showing up. That's what builds trust. So trust comes, to just close out this model then, trust comes when someone sees you as competent and someone with good character, willing to take the time to build the relationship, right? And so all the actions, all the strategies we've talked about today, as I mentioned earlier, are trust-building actions. At the heart of it, that's why it's so important. Because leadership is a relationship, and the crux of every relationship is trust. The question is whether or not you will choose, right, to get to know team members. You've got all the actions we've talked about are trust-building actions, and you are fully capable of getting to know team members. The leaders that you work with are fully capable of getting to know team members. The question is whether or not you'll do it. The question is whether or not they'll do it. So we've got a tool to help you, one to make it really easy. This is another tool that we use in our Know Your Team workshop. And during the workshop, we go in depth on the concepts that we've explored today. And at the end of the workshop, we give leaders the assignment to complete one of these cards for each of their team members. And it's just awesome then when leaders come back, what they report having learned, all kinds of insights about their team. I've done this exercise a lot and I always hear the same kinds of things. Just recently, participants said, I thought I knew my team, but when I really took the time in my one-on-ones to focus on these questions, I realized I wasn't being as intentional about the relationship as I thought. And so I was like, can I quote you? Can I take that? Because that is it. Like that is why we do this exercise. And so it's as simple as, doing what Jill talked about earlier with the strengths, just asking what activities really bring them joy, talking about their work preferences. You can use a tool like this. We're happy to help you with that if you don't have a relationship with someone that can provide you with that assessment. It's a great way to just understand team member style and work preferences. And then how you can listen more intently. And through those things, how you can increase trust in the relationship. So we have a worksheet that we provide, and so we're happy if you email Jill at this email address. We're happy to send you this worksheet so that not only you can complete it, but I encourage you to get a group of fellow leaders together and talk about what you learned today and encourage them. I mean, we want to drop of water hits a still pond and it ripples out, and we want to create as many ripples of people getting to know each other and connecting as we possibly can.
So we have a few minutes left. I want to pause for a minute because we've been talking a lot.
Yeah.
So let's go.
That good old B style.
See what questions you have. I see Katie has one in the chat about strengths.
There are thousands of things I could be doing that leverage my strengths, but part of the job necessitates I do these other things. Well, I would say, so a couple questions I would ask you, Katie, is what percentage of your job? I think that the encouragement I always give leaders is 70% of your time should be spent in that flow zone, that where you're balancing challenge and competence and engagement and skill. And so if you're out of that 70%, like why is that? It's because there are skills you need to learn. Are there ways that you could infuse your strengths more so into those things that necessitate energy draining activities? Are there other people that could take on those tasks? Those are some things that come to mind when I read that question. Jill, anything you'd add to that?
No, I think that's so good.
Mm-hmm.
All good questions and ideas. Thank you, Katie. Anyone else have any questions?
I was trying to find, there's a, here. Yeah, Katie, you might want to check out the book, Go Put Your Strengths to Work. So it sounds like you've done the Clifton Strengths Finder. The great thing about Go Put Your Strengths to Work is it's very action-oriented. It's also a Marcus Buckingham. So get the audio version so you can hear his voice.
Good. There you go.
He's a British guy that's like super cute.
Fun to listen to.
Mm-hmm. Good. Anything else? Any other questions? Please follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook. We provide a lot of insight, and we blog and write articles and just lots of good tips.
And good conversations that people engage. We love that. We love that.
And then I mentioned this earlier, so this is a series. So, on May the 3rd, my colleague Jody Virgil, who I absolutely adore from Bosma Enterprises, she's an HR leader in that organization. And their team has recently gone through the process we talked about earlier. And so Jody's going to share her insights on how she's used this information to really know her team and grow her team and how it's helped their organization as well. So we'd love for you to join us for that. Jill, any closing thoughts?
No, just thank you all for engaging and joining the conversation with us. We appreciate the interaction.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a great day, everyone. Go know your team.
Thanks, guys.